our life could be so much more fulfilling. And we would spend 2 hours a day just commuting to drop them off and pick them up, those school lines. And so I just said, we could educate our kids in the same amount of time that we're in the car.
Welcome to Our Family Invests, the podcast where successful couples come together to share their inspiring stories of balancing family, life, and business. We're Mike and Caroline Neubauer, husband and wife entrepreneurs striving to live our best lives with our family at the center. This podcast celebrates the couples who inspire us, invest in each other, and raise those around them to the next level. Join us as we explore their challenges and victories. Let's learn, share, and grow together. Today's guests are Michael and Kelly Gundersen, a couple who have intentionally shaped their family life in ways most people wouldn't dare. From homeschooling their kids to building a marriage rooted in trust, open conversations, and deep connection, the Gundersens are a powerful example of what it means to create a family with purpose. Their journey hasn't been without challenges. They navigated a long-distance relationship that led to an engagement at the Taj Mahal. They've redefined their parenting approach, and they've had to rebuild trust and communication in their marriage. But through it all, they've prioritized one thing above everything else: the strength of their family bond. Today, we're excited to dive into their story. Okay, guys, so let's do it. Let's hear where this all started. Take me back to when you guys first met and when you knew you were ready to spend your lives together.
Oh man. So yeah, the joke is that we didn't really officially meet until India, but we went to college together out in California, and we're just kind of acquaintances. It was a small college of about 1,000 undergrad, and we had just kind of circles of friends that intersected. But fast forward about 3 years later, I'm living in India for a year, working with some missionaries and an NGO, and she was a flight attendant and was visiting the country because one of her closest childhood friends had also lived in India at one point. And so we just reconnected through some mutual friends that I was working with, and that just kind of kicked off. We had about a week and a half together, just sort of inadvertently. People were playing a little bit of matchmaker, I think. And we just got a lot of quality time and just sort of learning about each other. And she flew home, and then the emails started flying.
It's funny. I think I had you labeled as not my type when we were at college together. Really me. And I landed in India and grabbed him by the shoulders because we were in this taxi cab. And I was like, I'm in India. And it just started I don't know, we just had we had a lot of time together. We had a lot of great conversation. I think by the time I left India on that first trip, my heart was just broken because he was my type by the end of that trip. And I'm like, what in the world? We were in college together for 3 years. But yeah, so that was in October. And then the novel emails started flying, I feel probably daily. And then I went back over Christmas, and we were definitely dating then. And then I went back in March, and I did not expect to get engaged, but I got engaged then. And then he finished his time
At the Taj Mahal is where we got engaged. Yeah.
It was kind of crazy.
So we went there as part of kind of a group of friends on her first visit. And then when we started dating, it's something that you traditionally do. If you're nearby the Taj Mahal, obviously, who doesn't take their friends? So it's kind of our place. It was sort of a spot that we had been together a few times. And so I was like, let's go. And her original engagement ring is from India. So it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super cool. Yeah, how iconic is the Taj Mahal to get engaged at, right? I imagine actually a lot of people probably get engaged at the Taj Mahal. Did you see any other people down on one knee there?
I don't know what the Indian, how they go about engagement. It's not quite the Westerner, get down on one knee. I don't know all of the stuff around it, but I always joke that the reason you would want to get engaged at the Taj Mahal is it's the tomb of a king's favorite wife. So of all of his wives, it was his favorite.
Great.
Yeah.
I expected change.
That is the selling feature for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did not expect an engagement ring on your March trip, and we're in March. So is it around this time? Do you even remember?
What day was it? It probably is.
Yeah, it's for sure. I don't know what day in March. I mean, I know the wedding anniversary, but I don't know.
That's amazing. So maybe this is your engagement day. It's also our anniversary.
engagement anniversary. It's your anniversary?
It is. Yeah.
March is a
Congrats.
special month.
How many
Yeah.
years?
14 years this year.
14 years married. Yeah. How about you two?
We will be 15 in October.
Amazing.
No, 16 in October.
Every year counts. Okay, so how did you keep up a long distance relationship, and how often, I mean, were you trying to get a flight path to India or just book random trips to India, Kelly?
Yeah, so I was working as a flight attendant at the time and I was still really junior, so I didn't have the freedom to just leave for weeks on end. But if I was going to go to India and go through all that trouble, I wanted at least 2 weeks. So, and I was also a little mindful of like, wow, I'm going to travel halfway, like I'm going to chase this guy around the world. So let's like pump the brakes and make sure I'm like really chasing someone I want to spend the rest of my life with. Because that second trip when I went in over Christmas, his family was also coming to be with him. And so I'd never met his parents, or he has 3 brothers or any of his brothers, or I'd met one of them. But so yes, as far as like planning them, I definitely wanted to see him again. But that meant me going there just because of his commitment to the ministry. And it was so much cheaper for me to travel than for him. So I was kind of saving vacation time and working my schedule, and also stealing my nerves to like meet his family on the other side of the country. It's a little different meeting them on the other side of the world. It's a little different meeting them there than like going to their house for dinner. So I was like, but it was great. Although
I heard an although in there.
Okay, so let me explain. So we went to the Taj Mahal on every trip. So first trip was like me, him and the missionaries. The second trip, we took Michael's family and his brother with us to the Taj Mahal, because that's what you do. Do you want to finish it?
Yes, and so my brother, having had experience with girlfriends in the past, was like, maybe we should put her on we took a family photo, and Kelly was going to sit in the family photo, and he was like, maybe she should sit up in a very jovial, kind of funny way. He's like, maybe we should put her on the outside. I'm like, nope, she's on the inside, like where she's going to sit. If this photo's going to get cut up, you're going with her. And so, yeah, that was, I do remember that joke.
What was the hardest part about the long distance relationship?
Oh man, we're reversing 15 years ago. I guess one thing that was easy about India is it's a 12-and-a-half-hour time difference. And so it didn't interfere with my day-to-day activities, because I would wake up and she would be kind of getting ready to go to bed. So we would talk then, and then I could work my day, with our ministry through the night. And then when I was getting ready to go to bed, I could call her and she would be waking up. So it was helpful from that standpoint. But I do think there's a learning curve that you only get from being in person, because 9 months of our relationship was exactly like this. It was kind of the beginning of Skype. I didn't have an iPhone. This is 2009. I'm trying to remember when iPhones came out, but there was no FaceTime. So I didn't have the ability to call her from my pocket outside of just regular cell phone. So I think the challenge was, moving back to the US, getting married 3 months after I moved back to the US, having a bit of reverse culture shock, living in almost third world environments. India's a very, it's just a wild, kind of very anti-Western place. And so I think that the big challenge was learning how to just interact on a day-to-day basis with like a person. Because a lot of, when you're staring at somebody across the screen, there's not really any downtime. You're either talking or you're hanging up. And so it allowed for a lot of intimacy to build over those 9 months. But then, how do you like watch a movie with somebody when all you've ever done is like had a lot of intense kind of one-on-one conversations?
Yeah. Kelly, you said when you guys were in college that he wasn't your type, right? You had labeled him as such. Michael, do you think that you changed at all while you were in India?
Yeah, I had some, it was definitely a transformative experience. So that could lend to part of why our relationship kind of grew. Was I was undergoing a lot of changes, just realizing, any Westerner that travels kind of on mission trips, you can kind of have this American mindset. Oh, I'm here to make things better. I'm here to do things. I'm here to work. And towards the end of my time there, I realized the flaws in that philosophy. And so, yeah, it was a growing experience in many ways. It's tough to kind of look back and remember kind of who I was at the beginning, because I very much remember who I was when I left. And it was like, man, I spent so much of my time here doing and not teaching. And so that's something that I remember definitely walking away with and exhorting people that were kind of on their way in of, hey, there's one thing for us to do when we're here, and it's not the easy thing. We can do plenty when we travel to places like that, but to enable local people that are going to live there for their entire lives and give them the tools and the education to improve their lives.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, travel, I think, is a great educator. And when I finished college, I did the same thing. I traveled. I went out to Italy for a while. And I remember one time I was sitting at a cafe in Cefalù, Sicily. And I remember you didn't see a whole lot of Americans in Sicily in general. I was there with a buddy of mine, and we were sitting there and we were ordering, whatever we were ordering. And this American couple, I mean, just your typical American couple come in. They look like they're each well overweight, and they are getting frustrated because the servers don't understand English. So they're just speaking louder and louder and louder, right? Thinking like, well, if I talk louder, you'll understand me easier, right? And now they're getting mad and everything else. And like, I looked over at my buddy and I kept thinking like, I think I said something to him like, man, stupid Americans. And of course, I'm a stupid American too, right? But I'm at least trying to speak the language and trying to fit in as best as I can. But I think because we had been there for so long, we kind of had a little bit more of an objective viewpoint. And it helps make you feel smaller, right? And see the world as so much bigger and help to see other people's perspectives a lot more. I felt like I grew a lot on that trip just from being in another culture like that. And so I think it's very possible that, maybe you did change in ways that you don't even realize, right? From who you were in college. Because at that time, we are growing so much, right? Mentally and emotionally and all the things. And so, maybe Kelly, you're onto something. Maybe he wasn't your type before, and maybe India made him the man that he is today.
Yeah, I mean, that comment is definitely more a referendum on myself and like I do think India did change him, but that comment was definitely more like I didn't know myself, and I thought I knew a lot of things about a lot of things.
Didn't we all?
Yeah, which I think that's even been like a great undoing, as that's been like an undoing of myself. It's been like a strengthening in my part of our marriage. Just the like undoing of like all the things Kelly thinks she knows about how Michael should act and Michael should be, and like why don't I focus on myself? So yeah, I played soccer and like ran in a small little group of people that played soccer, and Michael was just like he just like fun, just like followed him around, and I don't know, I wasn't very fun in college, so let's just be honest. It was just not very fun. So like fun and not fun, like yeah, that's definitely more
Michael get serious. That's funny because I did tell Mike also that he was not my type. So
I had a lot of growing.
And I did too, but here we are.
Yeah.
I love it. So cheers to finding the not our type.
Yeah.
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 So grateful.
So, Michael, you helped build a company that was recently sold and becoming a linchpin in the operation, right? You've also been intentional about building your marriage and your family. What are some of the shared principles between business and family life?
Man, I think one of them is boundaries. We moved from Florida to Texas about 10 years ago to start one of the franchises of that company at the time that was really small. And I said when we moved here, and it was like starting a new company in Texas. And I said, I won't work more than 40 hours a week. I just won't do it. And I had friends that said, man, I don't know how you're going to, I don't know if you're going to grow doing that. And just like putting parameters around that. We had, our son was 1 year old at that time. We have 2 kids. Jack is 11 now, and Karis, our daughter, is 9. But yeah, I just decided when we moved, I just said, I won't allow the intentional scaling of a company to eventually get acquired at some point to change how many hours I'm going to work. So in many ways, it forced me to train my team so that I could leave at 5 and the second shift would still be there and they would get their work done and if something went wrong while I was gone, well, that meant I failed in some way and I have to go back in and I got to train people. Otherwise, I'm there till all hours of the day, all hours of the night, doing the work myself. And so um, that's just always been something that I've really stood strongly by, where I won't allow my work to dictate my life. It's going to be the other way around. And so that has just served us, because for my entire career, I've been able to create that kind of environment, not without an occasional exception where, at a month or two where, it's like, we're about to get acquired. These things have to get done. And sometimes you're working, 100-hour weeks for a month, but that was a rule that I implemented at the very beginning, that I said, okay, this is a non-negotiable, and God was, gracious to allow that to.
Yeah, I love that. And Kelly, you are technically employed by Southwest, correct? And
Yes.
you give away most of your shifts so that you can prioritize spending time with family and also now homeschooling, but also retaining flight benefits. So how did you choose to make this transition? What made that even click in your mind that was a viable path?
Goodness, I kind of feel like the Lord just kind of like graciously led me there, and I didn't realize the potential that it had when I started the job. I had been working full time for about 7-8 years when Jack was born. And the first 5 years of this job are just pretty brutal as far as seniority goes. You're just spending holidays in all sorts of different cities than your home. And so I put in the time at the beginning, and then we made it work with when Jack was young, and then Karis was born, and my parents were like, don't quit, we'll babysit. So they have flight privileges too. And so, yeah, we wanted to try to make it until the kids were in school. If we can make it until the kids are in school, then I could go back and work more consistently, and we wouldn't be paying for me to not work, is how we had viewed it at that time. So Southwest is unique in the industry, I guess, as far as our work rules, that there's not a minimum that I have to fly every month. So it's super flexible, which is amazing. I have annual training that I have to go and do. But as far as Southwest is concerned, I'm a full-time employee. They schedule me full-time. And so in February, I bid like my whole month that I said I would not work. And so for someone like me I'm working at home doing homeschool with my kids, that works super well.
Do you always have to get shift coverage, or how does that work?
Yes. I mean, like last month in February, I was able to just bid to not have to not work the whole month. In March, I have half the month off. So then like when the summer comes around, I'll be scheduled full time. I'll put my trips out there for people to pick them up if someone wants to work extra. And if no one wants to work extra, then I'll entice them with some money, say please. And it works out.
We've been doing this for over 10 years. So, because she has not
Amazing.
really consistently worked at all for over a decade. And so it's something that we just made a decision that we wanted her to be a stay-at-home mom. The homeschooling was kind of a separate decision, because I think we thought that our kids were just going to go to either a private school or a charter school kind of nearby. So that's a whole nother kind of part of the
Yeah,
story.
let's dive into that a little bit, because homeschooling is really, I mean, that's a commitment, right? So how did you decide to do that, and what was that motivation there?
So I feel like there might be two answers to that. So going back from my history, I was homeschooled for like 5 years, and then was in a really small private school, and then a really big public school, and finished out again in another private school here in town. And so I was familiar with it. But from long ago, I was not a homeschool mom, so good to go. I know that about myself. Not a homeschool mom. And then Michael and I are at this church that was just like a place, I would say, like a memorial of growth and change in my life, just different times at this church. So I took this class that just really kind of dives into your life 18 years and younger. And kind of one of the mantras of the class is that children are excellent observers and poor interpreters. And so throughout this class, I was just kind of looking at like my defaults and why do I think this way and why do I do that and da da da, and just realizing a lot of that is from family of origin and and I learned that my family would call it like a stable family, meaning we didn't move. I grew up in the same house my whole life, but not a relational family. And I saw the consequences of that, for lack of a better word. And I saw that I was perpetuating those things with my own children, that I was, giving them a place to live, but I wasn't like pursuing and I wasn't curious. And I felt it like acutely because I was just looking at this from my own life. And I didn't want to be that sort of, I didn't want to have that influence on my kids. And so immediately I was just like, oh my gosh, they're going to this great, amazing, wonderful charter school. They get home at 4 and they still have an hour of homework and all they want to do is play and run around. And I was like, I need more time with these little people if I want to change like the course of our relationship. And then I was like, but wait, I'm not a homeschool mom. Like, this is a no-go. And so that just started, I don't know, 9 months, a year. I don't know how long the process was of just like this pressing in my spirit that like, I need to bring the kids home. I did all the things like fear set, like what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, is that reality? And just like went there and lived in that. And I was like, okay. And then just lots of time. Caroline, we talk about like my days away every month. And I just like, God just met me in my fears and in, the fear and the chaos is fear feels like chaos to me in my mind and in my spirit. And I feel like God just met me and, like he spoke to me and just like to my spirit and was like, this is what, I need you to do, or I want you to do this. This is the path forward for you. And I'm here with you. And it was just like, it was amazing. It was clear. It felt like a hug. There was no like judgment and condemnation. And I was like, oh, I'm scared. But it's okay. You can be scared and like have peace and be like nervous and have peace and move forward at the same time. And so our kids were in this amazing charter school. And so that you like have to win a lottery type of thing to get into. So I pulled Jack out and kept Karis there so that we could get back in if it just all blew up in my face. So that was a special kind of torture for half of a year. It was like having Jack at home and having Karis there. So like doing both. So then it started all over again and God was like, you really have to like cut the cord. Like you have to bring them both home and tear up your golden ticket that you won for the charter school. And so it was like another whole same situation. But again, I feel like the Lord just met me and was like, this is just take one step at a time, because I had planned like, oh, my kids will be there all the way through 12th grade. They'll get this amazing education. We're good to go. And I wasn't living dependently. I wasn't asking the Lord like what we're going to do about school. So I feel like I learned, it's kind of an agonizing situation to learn, like to just, you have light for your path. You have direction for the next step. You don't have direction until my kids are seniors in high school.
Hey family, real quick. If you would prefer to watch your content, head on over to Our Family Invests on YouTube. You can watch this podcast and more over there. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that little bell icon too to make sure you never miss an episode. And now, back to the show. So, Michael, let's get your take on homeschooling. Would it be safe to say that Kelly does the majority of homeschooling with the kids?
Yes, yeah, for sure. And so I was not going to pressure her to make that decision. I myself was homeschooled. I have three brothers that were homeschooled, all K through 12. Two of them are doctors, and so we professionally, it was not, we were all very successful. And even this is like back in the 80s and 90s when homeschooling was very fringe. And so I remember the freedom that came along with homeschooling. It was just like what our life got to look like. And but at the same time, I knew that the reason that she was feeling kind of that pull was from the relational standpoint. And even me growing up with my mom as my primary teacher from K to 12, also what I would say generally not a really relationally intimate family. And so I wanted that for our kids. And I'm just kind of the, my hot take on school is it's really hard to justify educating a kid from like 7 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It just doesn't take that much time, in my opinion. And so I was just, I had a strong belief, even though she didn't feel like, hey, I'm not a homeschool mom, I'm not a teacher. How am I going to teach math, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade math, to cover all these subjects? I felt confident that she would do well in that regard because I know the environment that I grew up in. I was like self-taught after the fourth grade. I was watching videos in my living room, grading my own tests. And so I just knew you're going to do great. And if this gives us all of that extra free time with our kids to be able to address the issues that invariably come up, the conflicts that our whole family has on a regular basis because I work from home, we end up getting to resolve conflict together, which just builds intimacy through, instead of just, a kid, an exhausted, third grader walking in the door and then you're fighting with over homework and forcing them to eat their dinner so they can go to bed and then waking them up at 6 a.m. and, eat your breakfast as fast as you can. We got to get out the door. I hated that life.
Familiar.
So that was part of what I just thought, pragmatically, it doesn't take, our life could be so much more fulfilling. And we would spend 2 hours a day just commuting to drop them off and pick them up, those school lines. And so I just said, you could educate our kids in the same amount of time that we're in the car. And so we've had to learn to then create boundaries even at home, though, where it's, hey, you got to get out of the house. Like, she has to leave because if she doesn't leave, she's with me and the kids 24/7. And just trying to create environments, which, there's so many options for kids today, even as well, to get out of the house, where our kids train jujitsu, our son wants to play football with, local teams. So there's ways that we can get involved in community. We have a great church family as well, because those were some of the concerns that we had of where are our kids going to find friends. But they even find them in the neighborhood, riding around on their bikes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, just riding their bike to their friend's house when otherwise they would be finishing up lunch, at school with another couple hours to go. So it's,
you touched on a lot of things there that kind of hit home for us, I think. And it's funny because yesterday we actually drove down to a charter school, which is like definitely one of the more desirable places for kids.
And it's a lottery system.
It's a lottery system. And we went there and we were sitting in the classroom and the people were giving their presentation and whatnot. And I could not help but think, there's no way I'm sending my kid here. I need to homeschool my kid. Those were literally the thoughts that went through my head. And as someone who, I didn't know anybody who was ever homeschooled. It was just all the weird kids that were on like the spelling bee or something, right? Like
you married the weird kid.
It was you, Michael. You were on the spelling bee, weren't you? But like, I don't know anything like that. Everyone I knew went to formal education, formal schools. But you also start to see that a lot of times the problem with, and I'm not going to say every school, but a lot of them, they have to teach to the lowest common denominator, right? They have to raise everybody up. It doesn't matter if your child is up here. Everyone has to get there before they can get further along. And so for us, it was something that was like, I think it would be a great school to send him to, but could there be better? Right. And I think that homeschooling scares the crap out of me. And it scares the crap out of Caroline because we both work from home and we don't want to be around our kid 24/7. We need that alone time. So What would you say to a couple like us who do have those kind of concerns? Like, is this something that we should do? Or is this something that we should pass on? What are the pros and the cons there?
So this is something that we were just talking about a few days ago. Our kids are, as we said, 9 and 11, and we have trained them to be really independent where they can make their own breakfast. I'm working on my son perfecting his French omelet. They can make salads for dinner. And so that being said, the challenge of homeschooling kids is really in those younger years, which is really like K to third, fourth, maybe fifth grade. But our son disappears on his bike on Saturdays for 5-6 hours at a time and is visiting friends' house around the neighborhood. And so we've created that independence, that, free range mentality a little bit with our kids, where we've kind of gradually built up trust where, we'll leave them home for an hour and then we leave them home for 2 hours and, they have a phone if they need to call us. But we can go on dates now and just leave our kids home. And we tell them, hey, there's ground rules. Don't leave the house. Don't answer the door. Don't try to make any food using fire. And, don't kill each other. You're family. And so a lot of those fears I think that people generally have, they're really unfounded as the kids grow older. And it's really just a handful of years generally that, if you think a kindergartner, first, second, third grader, yeah, they're going to need a bit more time. But that's time that you actually really want to have with your kids. And as they grow older, and we have kind of enforced playtime outside, like, hey, you're going to be outside for an hour, 2 hours. If you even knock on the door to come back in, unless there's some emergency, there's a consequence that's going to come with that. And they've learned to resolve, they'll get in a fight outside. We see them having to deal with it because they're like, we can't go to mom and dad. Like, the time's not up. And so we've had to create those boundaries where we say, okay, this is what life is going to look like. Because yeah, if we were all locked in these doors together, it would be bad news. So we've kind of built an environment where that doesn't happen. And then even just getting out of the house for different kind of social activities for them, that gives us some of that break that every parent obviously needs.
I think one of my personal apprehensions was I have gone to homeschooling, public school, private school, immersion school, distance school. I've done that whole gamut when it wasn't popular. And I grew up as an only child. And Nico is an only child. And so when I see him having to be independent or siblings independent homeschooling, I feel like that's a different aspect. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Just wrestling through this. What was it? The SWOT analysis? Is that what you said? Told me to do?
Yeah, like a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat, kind of that business.
So I did that over, like, in both circumstances. They stay at school, they come home. And it was super helpful to see that data just out in front of me. And I realized that so much of I saw all the fear. There was a lot of fear driving my apprehension and just like exaggerated non-reality because of the fear. So that forced me to think, like, I don't want to make decisions based on fear and these exaggerated non-realities that fear is driving. So that was very helpful to take the time to put that data down and even to like fear set. Like, let's say I bring them home and I drive their intellect into the ground. Like, with, is like, how could I do that? What would that look like? And that just is not reality. Like, it wasn't reality, like with math, with reading, and just even there was so much unknown for me about, like, why don't I look at what is really scary to me and then consult some kind of experts on it. So like reading. So I think if my kids know how to learn and they love learning, then there's nothing that they cannot learn. And so what is the basis of learning and loving to learning? It's just the ability to read and comprehend, to hear and comprehend what you're reading, what you're hearing. And so we focus a lot on reading. We focus a lot on being able to communicate through writing. And so those were fears that I had. So I think the thing that was helpful to me was getting like the realities of I keep them at school. What does that do for our relationship? What do I most value? I bring them home. What does that do for our relationship, for their education? What do I and am I being driven by fear or by faith? And what I think that's a huge part of our life, and what I think God is asking me to do. And so that was really clarifying. And also just like we make decisions like with the, we try to project, we make decisions with the information that we have, but like you can't plan Nico's education from now to high school. Like being willing to like relinquish some of that and take it year by year, every other year is, and I'm saying that I'm not meaning to be trite with that because that was me. And it was so hard to just be like, what does it look like to like truly like just release this and take this a year at a time. Granted, if you only have one school in town, then you don't have as much, you know, options. I think you might have more than one school in town. So you can take it year by year. It's like this school, that school's at home or whatever. So yeah, it was more, and that was just my fear. Like they have to be at this school that I perceive to be the best. And I think what was best for my kids is having a truly stable home with relational parents.
So do you regret choosing to homeschool the kids?
No. It was super clunky there for a semester, for sure. When the first semester Jack was home, it was super clunky. And then when Karis came home, Jack was better, but then it was clunky with her. So it's not all been like happiness and joy. It's definitely been clunky, but it's the work that I was supposed to be doing. And that is right.
And I wish she could like talk to the old Kelly because she's a transformed like individual, from this perspective. And so like I've seen the fear, like I've lived with it and seen, and from my perspective, there wasn't the fear because I knew I was from school. I knew what that world looked like and I knew her as an individual. I was like, of course she'll be able to do it. But I saw the irrationality of like the fears, which are, most fear is irrational, right? And so it's hard. You can't really judge someone's fear. And I wasn't about to do that because it's also just an individual decision. There's many, many highly, highly intelligent and relational, well-rounded individuals that have gone to every imaginable school type. So you can't even say that one's better than the other. It's just an individual choice. And it's really just the why. And I think that's been her driving force is, okay, like, why am I doing this? Because we still have our days where we're like, why are we doing this? And it's, we feel like our relationship with our kids is really strong and we can see those issues that pop up in their lives and get to have those conversations on the front end instead of the baggage that we've seen kids kind of in other families maybe come home from school with. And you're just saying, where did you learn that? What are you being exposed to? That we can't maybe filter out. But there's all sorts of drawbacks and benefits to every type of education. But she's really changed dramatically to the point that now moms that are interested in homeschooling, they're looking at her. When 2.5 years ago, she was looking for those people. She's like, who can I talk to? Like, what's the person that can help me? She even at the Better Life Summit in Vegas, she met a coach that she met with several times that helped structure her day and said, if this is why you're homeschooling, why doesn't your day reflect that? And it upset her because she was like, well, math is most important, so we need to start with math. And her coach is like, well, you said relationship is why you brought them home. Why isn't that the number one thing that you start your day with? So she would start her day with an hour outside. I would walk into my home office and start working, and she would walk down to the creek with our kids and not want to be there because she's like, what are we doing at this dingy little South Texas creek with no water in it? And our kids are having the time of their life because they're a kid in a creek at 9:00 on a Tuesday and they're just exploring. And she had this realization, oh, this is what it is. Like,
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that you guys are not regretting the homeschool decision. And, Kelly and I met through the Better Life Tribe and through our accountability pod, which we've been meeting for, I think, 2 years now.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. But I have personally seen your growth and your confidence and your just the beauty of your soul grow from when I first met you. And it is, it's really cool to see, because that whole saying of the gap in the gain, and then just seeing where you are as flourishing as a mom and a wife and yourself is really cool. So I'm really proud of you. Yeah. Do you want to jump into, obviously, all relationships can grow, they can get stagnant, they can struggle. Your marriage, you've touched on how trust, safety, the conversations that you now can have weren't always the case. Can you kind of dive into how you two have grown in that and chosen to prioritize each other?
take that one.
Sure.
Yeah, so I blame it on her ultimately.
It's a sign of a good relationship right
Yeah.
there.
Way to start, Michael.
Yeah, so our a revolutionary thing that happened in our marriage was maybe 4 years ago. Was through our church. We went through a curriculum called Reengage that's put out by a church called Watermark up in Dallas. And it's a 14-week marriage class that you go through as a couple with other couples that have all voluntarily signed up. And Kelly, she asked me, I'll give her credit, 2, 3, maybe 4 times. I won't go more than that, but ask me multiple times, hey, can we do this class? And, I don't have any problems. Like, do you have any problems? Like, our marriage is great. We don't need any help. And eventually I was like, all right, fine, let's do this. Like, let's go through it. And the premise of the course, if you were to boil it down, is if you imagine like each person has a hula hoop, and like you stay inside your hula hoop, and any problems that you perceive it to be in your marriage, you work on the person inside that hula hoop. You don't speak into the other person's life. You don't tell them what they're doing wrong or how they could change. And so that was really kind of life-changing for me to just say, okay, I can't look at her at all. And even little things that nags, annoyances, whatever, I get to work on me. And you do that in a community environment with other people that are doing that same thing together. And it's really transformational from a group perspective and then from our own marriage, because I can trust that she's doing that same work on herself. And so we're two people coming together and saying, you know what? I'm working on me. I trust that you're working on you. And then being given tools on, hey, this is how you communicate. This is how, these are things that we've done to each other that maybe we haven't brought up that we need to work through. This is how we can resolve conflict. Just using those tools alongside that environment was really transformational, to the point that we voluntarily decided to go through the same curriculum again with that same group that we've been close, dear friends with for 4 years now. We meet together every quarter, have dinner, check in on each other. And they're like those 3 a.m. phone call people where when it all hits the fan in your family, who do you call? And we have those people, and she can call the wives. She can call the men if she needs to say, hey, you need to talk to my husband about this. And we can speak into each other's lives now, where there is the trust, where we can call things out if we see them, because the trust is there. But the primary focus and the tool that we learned through that was, hey, work on yourself. I need to work on me. And what things am I doing that are, harming our relationship? But I blame her for getting us involved in that, which, it was a really transformational class that we went through.
Yeah, I agree. I think Reengage gave me the tools to communicate, but it also invited us to a new depth of vulnerability and honesty, that kind of going back to that whole thing from college where he's not my type. I thought I knew all the things, and I thought I knew this is how you do marriage. You just do your part, and I'm a good little Christian girl. Like, I don't have like a ton of skeletons in my closet, but there were things that for some reason I had kept from Michael. And so throughout that class, we were invited to share our secrets with our spouse. And we'd been married 10 years when we took that class. Again, there wasn't the thing that was big was that my shame and my condemnation and my fear were attached to those secrets. And that was the big thing. And so here I'm going to go and I'm going to share that with Michael. Like, how is he going to handle that? And how am I going to feel? And blah, blah, blah. And so it was just so cool to the pattern of the classes. You do your homework, you talk about your homework with your spouse before you go to the class. And then you go to the class and you talk about, well, how that went. And so, I was invited to think about the secrets that I have and why I have them and what's attached to them. And then he was going to ask me, so what secrets do you have? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so we did. And I just experienced like the presence of God in his response. I experienced like being seen and being loved and being known and being forgiven. And if that doesn't that left me grateful and humbled. And I'm just like, I withheld from you for 10 years and I shouldn't have, and that was wrong. And you just like freely and willingly forgave me. And it wasn't just like lip service. So it's things like that was so powerful if we had just left it at that. But then we went to the group and we watched other couples do that. And there's just like the vulnerability and the unity and just it was just really powerful and really a memorial for change. And so I think, it's hard to stay at that place, but once you've tasted it and once like this is what's available for your relationship, it gives me something to fight for. And then when I bring back to the hula hoop, if I'm feeling less than that close, there's often a lot of work to do inside my hula hoop. And if there's truly not, then it gives me a perspective like this isn't like if we're not jiving like we normally do, then my response is able to be more curious and compassionate rather than like, what's your problem? Just because I tasted of who Michael is and how he forgives and how he cares. Like his default isn't to just like hook me and make life difficult. It's not. So yeah, that was coming from like growing up in a church family, and I have 4 brothers, so I've always been like the good little girl. I thought I knew, and that's kind of like becoming more of a mantra. Is like there's so many beautiful and wonderful things about life and living and relating that you don't know, Kelly. So kind of like reorienting how to view like life and relationships and people with just curiosity and compassion.
You guys, I love how deep you guys go into each other, right? Like you guys spend a lot of time and a lot of effort strengthening your personal marriage bond. And that's really, really inspiring. What is one piece of advice or one thing that you've done that you would say has been the most impactful thing when working on your relationship?
Accept responsibility, own it, own thyself. And I
say it with conviction.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think.
Man, it's tough. Part of me wants to say like regular date nights has really been a big impact. But I think more than that, to almost make it more broad, is regular investment in our marriage, like intentional investment into what this is, whether it's traveling together without our kids. My mom has, since our son was born, has watched our kids for a week at a time to allow us to travel without our kids. And we've taken her up on that. So, it's doing a marriage class together. It's regular date nights. I think to just make it concise, it's really just saying, our marriage is our most important human relationship that we will ever have. And therefore it requires consistent time. And so if there's anything that I'm consistently doing, I work out consistently, I eat food consistently, I do a lot of things consistently. Why would I not make time for this relationship consistently? I would say that, and that seems too broad, but I think that would be my answer, is consistency and creating time and space for that. And if I don't, that time and space is going to get eaten up by something. Vacuum, if there's a vacuum of time in my day, something will fill it up. And it's actually quite a bit of work to be married. Like most people love for it to be this Hollywood idea. It's like, no, that's not how it works. It's actually quite a bit of effort and humility to stay married and to want to, because there are times when we would go out on a date and I'm like, I don't want to be around you, really. Like, I don't, but we're there. Just like, who wants to eat vegetables all the time? Who wants to work out all the time? Who wants to work on your relationship? Sometimes you just don't want to. Just like when I didn't want to do that class, I knew that it was going to be work that I did not want to do. But on the other end, I'm like, I became a different person at the end of it.
Yeah. Man, that's so good. You guys have shared quite a bit with us today, and I love that. So let's shift gears. Let's lighten it up a little bit here. I want to play a game that I just invented. That's called How Well Do You Know San Antonio? Because I know you guys live out there, right? And so when I'm a big nerd, I guess is the best word that comes down to it. But I also love maps and I like looking at things and I go on these tangents and then I chat GPT stuff and Google and all that fun stuff, right? So I found all these like random weird facts about San Antonio. So I want to ask you, okay, I got 4 questions on San Antonio. So let's see how well you know it. All right. So in the 1800s, the Alamo was almost sold to a businessman. What did he want to do with it?
I would be guessing.
Okay. What would you guess?
Almost sold to a businessman. What do you want? Turn it into a hotel.
Close, but no. He wanted to turn it into a grocery store. So like aisle 1 is where Texans fought for their independence. Aisle 5 is where you get avocados, that kind of thing. Yeah. So thankfully the state of Texas stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. And yeah, so it's not a grocery store.
Wow.
I do like your next question.
This is a good one. You're not going to know this one. If you do, I'll be very impressed.
He is in auto parts.
I mean, all right. Why do some people in San Antonio sprinkle baby powder on their car bumpers?
We did this in high school at
Yes. Whoa. You know this. Okay,
yeah.
so this.
You know why you did it?
Well, it was to see if you would do it, is to see if you were going to be pushed, to see the prints of the ghosts that were going to push you across the track.
Impressive.
You
yes.
just allowed him.
That is super impressive.
And your husband.
Yeah. So there's an urban legend about ghost children at the intersection of Shane and Villamane. And the story goes that a school bus full of kids was tragically hit by a train there. And if you stop your car on the tracks and put it in neutral, tiny ghost hands will supposedly push you to safety. And that's why people even sprinkle baby powder on their car bumpers to see the tiny handprints. Now, I don't recommend trying this at home, right?
Yeah, this is not a recommendation.
I don't think you do in high school.
Wow.
I'm really impressed that you knew that.
Yeah, now Michael wants to go and try it on next date night.
Don't try that.
We're going.
All right. So, okay, next one. 1968, San Antonio hosted the World's Fair. And for it, they designed the Tower of the Americas, which kind of looks like the Space Needle, right? But do you know what the original design of the Tower of the Americas was supposed to look like?
No.
The Eiffel Tower.
No. It was originally designed to look like a giant Colt revolver. So a nod to the Texas cowboy history. And they later decided that maybe a gun in the skyline wasn't the best PR move. So Space Needle.
We need to bring it back.
I know, that would be awesome.
How cool would that be? Just a giant gun.
Yeah, it would probably be very celebrated.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Gotta love Texas.
Final question.
All right, last question. Why was there once a law in San Antonio prohibiting people from carrying ice cream cones in their back pockets?
Which I think is odd anyways. I've never seen.
Yeah, now you have to have a law against it.
Yeah.
There's a
Against
law.
carrying ice cream cone in your back pockets. I mean, what are we talking about? Is there a certain age of person that this law is targeted at? It's
Would it
blanket law.
matter?
I'm just imagining all the little school kids sitting on their ice cream, but they wouldn't put it.
I'm gonna say because if they didn't want it to look like they had a gun in their back pocket.
Okay, all right. Well, actually, it was believed to have been aimed at preventing people from stealing horses, because it was thought that people would use ice cream to lure horses by putting it in their back pockets, as the horses would be attracted to the scent. So, urban legend, I don't know if this is true or not, but these are all things that the internet told me, so it must be true.
I mean, we know the ghost baby powder thing is true.
That was impressive.
I've never heard that.
And you did it.
Yeah, that was pretty good. All right, you guys. So, guys, what is next for you both personally and professionally?
Personally, we're in the middle. I am personally in the middle of kind of a gratitude exercise of kind of almost like a Sabbath type environment where I'm trying to say life is right in many, many ways. I'm an Enneagram 1, so I tend to have a very critical eye towards the world, my family, everything around me. And I'm working on that, saying, okay, what is there to be grateful for? What can I just enjoy about my life? The fact that I get to work from home, we get to travel extensively. So personally, that's where I'm kind of at right now, just being grateful. Professionally, one day I'd like to start my own company doing what I'm doing right now, which is selling automotive parts. And when that is, I'm not sure what that date is, because so much of that dream was tied to a critical heart, based on the world that I got to live in. And now I'm realizing, man, God has given me so many of the things that I want that, is this out of a dream? Is this bringing from discontent, or is it a dream based in some other reality? So that's kind of what I'm working on professionally, and just trying to be thankful for what I have.
Love that.
I love that. Kelly, anything?
I'm excited. Kind of going off what Michael said with the gratitude. I feel like I'm growing in joy for where I am right now with just all the clunks that we've come through. And I'm just grateful to be like, I'm where I'm supposed to be right now, doing what I'm supposed to do. And there's a lot of work to do in this moment. And it's work, but it's the work I'm supposed to be doing. Sprinkled in large doses with just like goodness. So we're going to go on an art field trip on Saturday to Italy to go over Renaissance artists that we've just been studying, like get lined up with our co-op. So for the last 2 months, we've been studying the Renaissance, and we get to go and see the birthplace of the Renaissance with my kids. And they've been reading books about Leonardo da Vinci and like telling me what they're reading. And I'm so excited to get to go, but I'm excited for them to like connect and see it too. And I'm excited to see like those connections happen like in their little minds. And then also just the gelato all the time, every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I'm like finally grateful to be where I am in this journey. And I'm excited to just keep learning with my kids. I think we're going to do this again next year at this point. And so I don't know. I'm excited about what we'll get to learn next year. So
I'm excited for you guys too. So if our audience wants to ask you about questions, because now through your experience, you are definitely more of an expert in the field in homeschooling, also auto parts. You're kind of the king on that too. So where can they connect with you?
I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to give my cell phone number. I'm not on social media. And so I've turned off like Instagram and Facebook to where it didn't have an influence in my life. So if somebody wants to text me, now if you call me, it'll automatically get silence because I silence all unknown callers. But if they want to text me, they can text me.
Okay.
So yeah, my number is 407-687-9192 if somebody has a question or wants to chat.
Amazing.
Awesome.
And Kelly, are you still on Instagram? Would that be the best place?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not checking it a ton, so they can do that or email me.
We can drop that in the show notes if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We appreciate your time, your commitment, and your leadership for your kids and for us other parents. So appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you guys. We really appreciate you both.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Thanks for being part of the family today. If you want to see more of our journey through our personal life, businesses, and adventures, give us a follow on Instagram at Our Family Invests.
If you like this podcast, share this episode with a friend. And if you really want to support us, we would be so grateful if you would leave us a review on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Your review helps us to reach a bigger audience and bring on more amazing guests. Thank you so much. We really, truly appreciate you.